Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another one of the preview and prediction videos we are doing for the 2025 season here on Roll Tide 99. We have already done Ohio State, we did Alabama, and now we're going to the third one of them, the South Carolina Gamecocks. And as you can see, I have a special guest here. Introduce yourself.
What's up, everybody? It's Carolina Jackpot. I am one of the world's biggest South Carolina Gamecock fans. I'd like to think so anyway. We got a channel over here on the YouTube space. Been doing this for about, I've been doing college. I've had a YouTube channel for over 10 years, so 2013-ish, but started doing college football content over here about 2017, 2018. Been live streaming games for at least the past 5 seasons, doing watch and react videos. People really seem to enjoy them. Uncle Lou recommends my channel all the time to folks in his live chats. So we have a heck of a good time doing that. For any Alabama fans in the house watching your videos here, which I'm sure there are. I actually went to the game down there last year and actually live streamed the entire fourth quarter of the game from inside the stadium, which was pretty cool. I have not ever been able to do that at a stadium before. So your internet down there actually works in the stadium, which I thought was kind of cool because it doesn't here. It doesn't here. You don't have any kind of connection at Williams-Brice Stadium. So pretty good stuff there. I had a good time. Wish we could have won the game. But at least it was a good game. Looked like it was going to be a blowout at first, but then we came back, made a game out of it. Just kind of came up a little bit short, but everybody was real respectful. I mean, there wasn't a lot of trash talking. Now, if they had lost, I don't know how they were going to act. But anyway, I enjoyed my time there.
All right. So what we always do here is before we go into the nitty-gritty with the schedule, we always talk about the previous season. And for South Carolina, I feel like there's 2 games in particular that you can point to that kept South Carolina out of the playoffs. One of them is the aforementioned Alabama game, which personally, having saw that game, I feel like you could go 2 ways with that one. You can argue Alabama should have dominated, but shot themselves in the foot way too many times. You could also say the same about South Carolina, how they clearly played better than what they were supposed to going into the game, but 1 or 2 mistakes kept them from winning the game.
Yep. They started too slow. A couple of turnovers that cost them there. Alabama had all the motivation in the world because they were coming off of that Vanderbilt loss. So, we thought we were going to get blown out. We thought we were going to really just feel the wrath, and we did for a while. But then finally figured some stuff out and got back into it. It's just, Lenore's took a few sacks there's just some breakdowns in protection there, and, turned the ball over a couple of times. You can't do that. So, yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, so that one has to feel frustrating if you're South Carolina, knowing that game kept you out of the playoffs. But I think an even more frustrating one was week 3 against LSU for 2 reasons. First off, South Carolina had a 17-point lead in the second quarter, only to allow LSU to come back within striking distance. And then you also had that absolutely terrible call late in the fourth quarter where clearly Nussmeier was a defender, not a passer, but yet the ref called him as though he was a passer, gave LSU the ball back, and LSU kicked the game-winning field goal.
Yeah, that was I point to that game. That just a lot of stuff went wrong in that one. Of course, Lenore Sellers went out with injury at halftime. He didn't play the second half of that game, and we let them get back in it. That's the thing. It's tough to it's easy to point to the referee thing with there's a few questionable calls in that game. But look, They were up 17-0. They shouldn't have let them come back at all. They should have put their foot on the gas and or not taken their foot off the gas, I should say. And they should have, at that point, they could have blown them out. But they let them get back in the game, and that's, they put it in officials' hands at the end. So that was their own doing more than anything. That was a tough one too. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so that was the season right there. You did get blown out by Ole Miss, but really,
one more thing I wanted to add too. It was even made it even worse. LSU was not. They were not really. I mean, they were a decent team. I don't think LSU was that great of a team last year. They weren't that good. I mean, you guys beat them by like, what, 30, 40 points. They dropped some more games there too. So, they wasn't – it's not like we were dealing with the 2019 LSU, or even the LSU from the season before when Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. Pretty bad loss, in my opinion.
Now on to 2025. The North Sellers and Rocket Sanders both come back. You're heading into your 5th year. Sorry about that. 5th year under head coach Shane Beamer. What has been your impression of Shane Beamer as head coach in South Carolina?
Before we go any further, I got to correct a little something there. Rocket Sanders is not back this year. His eligibility was up. He got drafted actually.
Oh,
late.
Sorry about that.
But but that's fine. My impression is Shane is. I think Shane is really turning into a good program manager. Shane's not going to be a great X's and O's head coach, right? Because he just doesn't. He didn't specialize in one side of the ball or the other when he was coming up through the coaching ranks after his playing days were over. I mean, he was a GA. I mean, he was coaching tight ends at one point. He was coaching running backs at one point. I mean, I think he was even coaching cornerbacks at one point. So he's not. He's never been a coordinator. So he's going to be more of that program manager type coach who doesn't really kind of gravitate to one side of the ball or not. Like they like to say, Lincoln Riley is a brilliant offensive mind, but doesn't care about defense. But Kirby Smart is a brilliant defensive mind. But sometimes their offense has issues. He's more well-rounded and can be a guy who can go out and get those coaches to coach up those positions. Now, he's kind of had some struggles finding a really good offensive coordinator. His defensive coordinator hire of Clayton White, who's been there since day one, has turned out to be really good, I think. But, just watching Shane, the way he interacts with the players, if you've seen him in the press conferences, he's a really fiery guy. He's a really emotional guy. I think he genuinely cares about his players. I think he genuinely loves the players. Sometimes he can get his cage rattled a little bit too easily. He can let other coaches get under his skin, which we've seen. He can let certain situations in games with officials and just whatever type factors get under his skin a little bit too much. Kind of gets over emotional at times, which is something he kind of needs to work on, I think, and tone down a little bit. But he comes from a great stock. Everybody knows who his dad is. And the Beamer ball thing with the crazy special teams plays and the just ingenious things on that side of the ball. It showed up here in Columbia some years more often than not. But I can't really complain about the job he's done so far. He's kind of been on my bad side a few times when we're losing games. The getting overly emotional stuff kind of riles me up a little bit. And but then when we're winning games, I look at it and say, well, it's just because he's passionate and he cares. So I think he's headed down the right path. He's recruiting really well for us. His staff they're putting together Another good recruiting class this year. Now, right now, they're currently sitting here ranked at 56th, I think. They've only got 8 commitments. If you look at them, though, the player average is what you got to look at. And we're sitting at like a 91.5. And you got to go way up that list of teams all the way, I think, to number 30, which is Oregon, who hasn't brought in a lot of guys yet either to find a team with a higher player average than South Carolina. And we're higher than a lot of teams in the SEC right now. They've taken 8 players, I think 6 4-stars and only 2 3-stars. So recruiting it's on the uptick. They've got some crystal balls right now for some really good players, a couple of in-state guys. South Carolina's kind of dominating recruiting here in the Palmetto State. Kind of walling this one off to be ours, which is a good thing. When high school football in South Carolina is good, we produce a lot of talent, and the state of South Carolina is growing in population by leaps and bounds every year. So that's going to just produce even more good high school talent. He's also tapping into North Carolina, our neighbor, which has like 12 million residents right now, and they've produced some really, really good talent over the years too. And I forget the year that we're talking about, but you go back, I think it was like over the past – maybe it was the past 15 years, I'm not sure, of NFL drafts that the state of North Carolina has produced like 98, maybe it was first and second rounders, maybe. I can't exactly remember. I remember the numbers, but I can't remember the exact time frame. And South Carolina has produced like 47 of them. So he's starting to tap into North Carolina and get some players up there now to come to our program too, which is huge because we don't tend to always land a whole lot from the state of Georgia, and we've kind of been leaning on the state of Georgia to kind of get some guys at one point, but now we're going up north for them. Also, that Delaware, Maryland, Virginia pipeline is proven to be really fertile recruiting ground for South Carolina as well.
And it's interesting that you brought up North Carolina, because if South Carolina keeps recruiting like they do the state of North Carolina, it makes you wonder how that dynamic is going to work now that Bill Belichick is in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's true. And North Carolina, now I don't know where they stand at as far as from an NIL standpoint with football. I mean, I know they're spending a ton in NIL on the basketball side of things. Obviously, North Carolina's a basketball school; it always will be. But there are a lot of rich alumni at UNC, and they'll pump some money into that program. I think if they see or feel like it's going to be successful. Of course, there's also just the aura for a high school kid of being able to go and play for, like, arguably one of, if not the greatest coaches in NFL history, most successful at any rate. People can say, well, he was only successful because of Tom Brady. Well, I mean, what's the
one who
measure
brought Brady in?
Yeah, exactly. What's the measure of success with some of these other guys? I mean, it's not like they didn't have a good player or two on their team as well. So, that's definitely a concern.
All right, so now that we've talked about last year and put that behind us, now that we've talked about what's going to be this ground for South Carolina this year, let's go ahead and look at South Carolina's 2025 football schedule. You actually start on a Sunday, which breaks the trend of the past few years of LSU playing on a Sunday for the SEC. You are in a neutral site at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to take on Virginia Tech. What I'm going to do for this is I'm going to let Jackpot give his prediction first, and then I'll give my prediction for each game.
Okay, Virginia Tech, on Sunday, August 31st. I think that's the second time that I can remember us playing on the Sabbath. We played Georgia on a Sunday in 2016. Game got pushed back a day because of a hurricane that ran through down here, and we lost that game. Outside of that, I don't know if we played any bowl games on Sunday. I can't really remember the one that we have. Yeah, Virginia Tech last year, disappointing season. Quarterback is back in Kyron Drones, but they're also replacing coordinators on both sides of the ball. They lost a ton of players to the portal on both sides of the ball as well. One of the new coordinators didn't even coach in college last year; he was coaching high school or something. I don't know. So I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with Virginia Tech. Drones kind of struggled at times last season. I think that he's going to come out and he's going to want to put on a really good performance. He's going to put on a good performance. This is going to be a scrappy bunch that wants to prove something that last year was a fluke. That wasn't who they are. I think this game's going to be tough, but I think the Gamecocks end up winning it. I think we're favored by 9.5 points right now. I think that's too many points. I think Virginia Tech's going to be tough. It can go down to the fourth quarter, which is going to, not going to make a lot of Gamecock fans happy. But we don't always play great in opening games. We generally have been winning them, but all you got to do is go back to last year's game against Old Dominion when South Carolina had to pull out a fourth quarter win against a group of 5 team that really, I don't even think they made a bowl game. So I'm going to give us the win here, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same concerns about South Carolina in week 1 you do. It's not nearly the same concerns I would have if this were LSU, who always seems to lose in week 1. However, I think what breaks this for you is that Virginia Tech always seems to be the one that gets hyped in the ACC. They're going to be the ones who takes over a terrible ACC, and it just never happens. And then you're a lot more familiar with Mercedes-Benz Stadium than Virginia Tech is. And so I think that's ultimately what swings it, is that even though it's technically neutral site, it's going to be more South Carolina crowd than Virginia Tech crowd. And I think that ultimately brings it in favor of South Carolina in week 1. I'm picking the Gamecocks in week 1. Week 2, I don't think there's really a lot to talk about with week 2 because it's the FCS's South Carolina State. Now, you did mention early last year you did struggle with Old Dominion, but I think this one shouldn't be as bad as Old Dominion from last year with South Carolina State. I think you should probably get the easy win in South Carolina State week 2.
Yeah, that's a home. That's a night game. South we should cruise, win by 40+ points easily. South Carolina State's actually a decent FCS team. I think they only lost 1 game last year. They're a HBCU from Orangeburg, South Carolina, but so we'll roll them. So moving on from that.
Following that, you actually get your first conference game because you're playing in week 3 at home against Vanderbilt. What's your thoughts on Vanderbilt?
It kind of faltered down the stretch last year a little bit. I went to that game as well. Vanderbilt was kind of beat up by the time Carolina went to Nashville. We beat them 28-7. Really didn't have a whole lot of problems there and poured it on a little bit in the second half. Diego Pavia, definitely a gamer. He's got some pieces around him too. They really haven't lost a lot on either side of the ball. But I think their over-under win total from Vegas is only sitting at 4.5. They returned 9 offensive starters and 8 on the defense. They're coming off of, before they play South Carolina, I kind of just bring stuff here to reference here just to kind of look and see who these guys are who we're dealing with. They play at Virginia Tech the week before they come to Carolina. So that's going to be a tough game for them. Virginia Tech's going to be in revenge mode there. I think Vanderbilt will drop that game. I think South Carolina beats them. I don't a home night game. We've beaten Vanderbilt every year since 2008. That was the last time we lost to them. One of these days, eventually they're going to lose. I don't think it's this year. Not at home at nighttime with Sellers. South Carolina's just got too much depth, too physical for them. I think we get the win there. But once again, I don't think it'll be easy. I could see us making some mistakes there and making it too close for comfort. But ultimately, I think Carolina gets their first conference win.
Yeah, I mean, Vanderbilt last year was a good story with the upset over Alabama, but the typical sort of theme with Vanderbilt is that they have a good season every once in a while, but then they'll go right back to not making a bowl game. I think South Carolina, with it being home field, should be able to pull out the win. But word of advice, Carolina Jackpot, don't jinx yourself because remember, every Alabama fan said Vanderbilt is the worst road environment for the home team. And we went into Vanderbilt and lost. So don't
Yep.
jinx yourself there, Jackpot. We all know what the jinxing power is with Vanderbilt. But
That's true.
But after the Vanderbilt game, you actually get your first true road game, not neutral site game, true road game. The Battle of the Columbias, because he actually had to go to Columbia, Missouri to take on Missouri. Your thoughts, Jackpot?
I've gone back and forth on this one. It's time for South Carolina to win a game in Columbia, Missouri. Again, we haven't beaten them there since 2017. Eli Drinkwitz has kind of had South Carolina's number since he's been at Missouri. Last year, we finally broke a little losing streak to them and just barely did that. They're replacing a lot at Missouri this coming season, especially on the offensive side of the football, bringing back 5 starters. Defensively, they're only losing 2 guys. So I think they'll still be solid on that side of the ball. New quarterback there, Bo Prabula, who comes over from Penn State. He's a runner, and he's that type of athlete who can give a team some problems. I don't know a whole lot about his new receiving core or who they're going to throw the ball to. They did bring in a transfer portal running back, Hardy, from UL Monroe. And this guy's got 3 years left to play. And he was, I think, rated the number 1 transfer running back in the portal, depending on who you looked at. The kid that went from Alabama to Michigan is also, people are also considering him the number 1 transfer portal running back too. So it just depends on what service or what person's writing the article, I guess. But he looks like he's going to be tough to stop. Drinkowitz is going to have a good offense. He will end up having a good offense, and he'll find some players here who are going to be diamonds in the rough. He always finds a couple on every team that turns out to be the heart and soul of the team that you don't even know who they are. 2023, it was that running back, Cody Schrader. Last year, ironically, it was a quarterback, Brady Cook, who was hurt a couple of games there. Mizzou kind of got blown out against you guys, got blown out by A&M when he was out. But aside from that, I mean, they had a pretty solid season. I've gone back and forth on this one. That defense, their defense is stacked. Offensively, they may struggle early on. This is game, 4 here?
Yep.
Looking at their schedule, they have a pretty soft schedule before Carolina comes to town. Central Arkansas, the UL Lafayette, which is, they're an okay Group of 5 team. They do play Kansas. That's a big rivalry game for them. It's early in the season. I think we get the win over them. I think we're able to eke out a win over them somehow, some way. Now, if this were later in the season, like in November, when Drinkowitz is able to get his offense really rolling, I might pencil this in as a loss. But for a September game, I think South Carolina breaks that losing streak there and wins this one.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way because if it were later in the season when Missouri had more time to gel together, then it could be a threat. But Missouri, they have too many people to replace, and South Carolina is going to be their toughest test to that point. I think even though it is a road game, you do go to Missouri to get the win in week 4. And then going into week 5, you come back home and you're playing Kentucky. What's your thoughts, Carolina Jackpot?
Of course, 3 years in a row now, 3 in a row, Carolina over Kentucky after they had won the previous, I think, 5 against us, believe that or not. Well, no, 4 out of 5, something like that. We've beaten them every year, 22, 23, 24. Last year, went on the road to Kentucky, beat them week 2. We had people telling us after South Carolina's opening game performance they were going to lose to Kentucky by 3 touchdowns and just all kind of crazy nonsense. I didn't believe it, and we went up there and blew them out. They just had absolutely no offense whatsoever. This year, they're bringing in another transfer portal quarterback, Zach Calzada, who was once at Texas A&M. Now was at Incarnate Word. I don't know a whole lot about him. He had a little bit of success, I think, at Texas A&M.
Yeah, we remember him. He is the one who famously beat us when we were number 1 and they were unranked.
Ooh.
Zach Calzada when we went to Texas A&M in 2021 and lost as the number 1 ranked team.
Wow.
When Texas A&M was unranked.
He may be a decent quarterback. I really don't know what kind of weapons he's got there. They lost their best 2 receivers to the transfer portal. They're going to have to replace a running back. It's just a totally different new team. I think Mark Stoops, I think he's starting to run out of gas there a little bit. I think the whole vibe around the program is not good from what I hear from their fans, some of the ones who come on my channel. It's just not great right now. I think we get the win there at home. I think Carolina beats them by a couple of scores.
Okay, sorry if you saw movement there. I had to plug in my computer. But
no.
I have the same feelings about Mark Stoops that you just said. I think it's going to be his last year at Kentucky. We kept waiting and waiting for Kentucky to be the team that finally won what was then known as the SEC East.
Mm-hmm.
Then we thought he was going to break out last year. Gave us some confidence by beating Ole Miss, but that was it. They went 4-8. I don't see a lot to value in Kentucky. I think Mark Stoops either finally retires or is fired at some point in the season. And I think you should get a solid win over Kentucky in week 5. And then in week 6, you're off. You get your first bye week. Every team gets 2 bye weeks this year because of the way the calendar fell. I believe what it is that if it's a year where there's 14 Saturdays in between Labor Day and Thanksgiving, each team gets an extra bye week, is what I believe it is.
Interesting. I didn't know because, they did it. It was that way last year. And I thought that was just a one-time deal, and then it rolled around again this year. And I said, well, maybe this is going to happen all the time now. So,
well, I've heard about it before, where it's something dealing with the way the calendar falls with the amount of Saturdays in between a particular time period.
Yeah,
but you get your first bye week in week 5. Unfortunately, coming off the bye week, you get what I think is South Carolina's toughest game, because in week 7, you have to go on the road to Tiger Stadium to play LSU. What's your thoughts here?
Well, it's a tremendous opportunity. I look at LSU at that point in the season, and I don't really I'm looking at them right now. At that point in the season, I think I see them maybe with 2 losses at most. At most, that's them dropping games at Clemson and Ole Miss. They have an off week the week before too, and they, like us, will have played 2 conference games. Garrett Nussmeier, this kid's tough. He's got a bevy of transfer portal wide receivers come in. Marion Brown, kid from Kentucky, going to be playing wide receiver for him this year, and he actually is pretty good. Special teams to be interested to see what he does there, getting around a team with some better talent around him there. Their running back Durham kind of gassed South Carolina a bit last year as true freshman, so he'll probably be more improved this year. Defensively, LSU always seems to kind of struggle a little bit. They brought in that coordinator from Missouri, the Blake Baker, before last year. He was supposed to do some wonders there with the defense. It didn't really happen. I think they had some struggles, but I think that unit will be improved. I think LSU will be a little bit of a better team this year. Tough road environment for Carolina. You don't really know what you'll have injury-wise going in at that point. You'd like to think you're probably going to be pretty healthy, being that it's not that late into the season and you're off of a bye week. But it's just a tough environment. I don't see South Carolina being able to win that one. I think we dropped that game.
Yeah, there's several things about that LSU game that would concern me if you're a South Carolina fan. Number one, LSU, already pretty talented, brings in the number one transfer portal class. You also have Garrett Nussmeier, second-year LSU quarterback. We've seen second-year LSU quarterbacks do wonders with Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels. And then, of course, the main thing that would concern me, and I'm a Bama fan, I've seen Alabama go into Tiger Stadium and struggle in years where they should have never struggled. And another thing, too, is that if South Carolina and LSU are doing as well as we think they are at that point, it's going to be a night game. Yeah. Tiger Stadium on Saturday night is something else. Unfortunately for South Carolina, I think you're going to take your first L in Tiger Stadium in Week 7.
Yeah, that one's is currently listed as a flex game. It's in the flex category, but I'm sure it'll be a night game. I agree with you there. I think South Carolina will play well. I don't think they're going to get blown out, but I don't think they're going to win either.
Okay, so the next one is the most – I hate to say it's the most iffy game. I don't really have a doubt about the outcome that I'm going to get to in just a minute. It's how good or bad the team is going to be, because there are so many mixed opinions on this team that I can't even count them. Because on October 18th, you're coming back home to South Carolina and you're playing Oklahoma. What's your thoughts on Oklahoma and how you think the game's going to go?
Well, they upgraded tremendously, not only on the offensive side of the ball with the talent, but with the coaching, bringing in Ben Arbuckle, the OC from Washington State, bringing in the quarterback that he had at Washington State there, John Mateer, and they brought in another kid people are saying is the number one transfer portal running back, Jaden Ott from Cal. He was banged up a little bit last year, so I believe he's healthy and good to go this year. They were returning some receivers who were hurt last year. Mateer made, a lot of plays. He threw for a lot of yards out there at Washington State, but that's the thing. He did it at Washington State. I don't really know what to expect from this guy at Oklahoma playing against SEC defenses. I mean, he's going to be playing with SEC level talent around him, so that could be a you never know. You never know with these transfer portal guys that are coming from these lower classification. Washington State, not really a lower classification school, but they played a lower classification schedule last year. A lot of teams from the Mountain West and a lot of weaker opponents. Since the Pac-12 kind of dissolved, they had to kind of put together a makeshift schedule there. I mean, I think they're going to be pretty good. Now, the one thing that does favor us in this game a little bit, if the two teams are pretty evenly matched coming in, they got to play Texas the week before. Now, if they drop that game, they get beat up a little bit. It's a rivalry game. that could work to our advantage. If they go in there and win that game against Texas, that could definitely work for our advantage. It'd be kind of putting themselves in prime position for a letdown. And they've got a lot coming back here. Not a lot coming back. They're replacing a lot with some talented players. I'm not sold on Brent Venables as a head coach, but I think this offensive coordinator is going to make some things go. We beat them up pretty bad last year too. They're going to look for some revenge for that one, which honestly we beat them 35-9. Still got outgained by 40 yards. I mean, I don't know how that happens, but we did. This one, I think this is listed as this is going to be a noon game. It's already slated a noon game. This is during the time when they have the fair right across the street from the stadium and the fairgrounds. So, that's kind of a sleepier atmosphere. You'd like a game like this to be at night, but unfortunately it's not going to be. Man, I'm going to go on ahead and give us the win in this game because it's at home, but I don't feel real confident about it. I really don't. I think this team's going to be looking for some revenge for that beatdown last year, and it would not shock me at all to see us drop another one here, but I'm going to go on ahead and give us the win in it.
Yeah, like I said at the top of this segment, a lot of people have varying opinions about Oklahoma. Some say the talent they brought in is going to help them a lot, but there's others who, like you said, believe Brent Venables is going to hold Oklahoma too much back to where it won't matter. Oklahoma also probably has one of the tougher schedules in the SEC. They're coming off of the Texas game, which I think is going to be a loss for them. And I actually think you do get the win over Oklahoma, especially since I really can't look past how you dominated them last year in their own stadium and they have to come to you this year. I think you get the win this year over Oklahoma. And then following that game, a lot of people who are watching this video probably are watching this for this part of the video only, because the next game after Oklahoma is on October 25th in Williams-Brice Stadium. Your South Carolina Gamecocks will be playing my Alabama Crimson Tide. Again, you're the guest, so I'm going to let you give your thoughts first and your prediction, then I'll give mine.
Okay, this is going to be a night game. I think it's in the flex window right now. Now, given how they both play up to this point, if South Carolina has 3 losses up to this point, it's probably going to be an afternoon game on the SEC network. If they both have 1 loss or somebody's undefeated, it could be a primetime game. Last time Alabama came in was 2019, I think. We lost that game. That was when Tua was quarterback in Alabama and Will Muschamp was coaching Carolina. South Carolina knows they can play with Alabama, obviously, what we saw last year. I just, I don't really know what Alabama's going to have at the quarterback position by that point. You got a really, really talented freshman back there, Russell, or is his second year in the program, or is he a true freshman?
He's going to be a true freshman, although quarterback-wise, I think by that point we still have Ty Simpson as the starter.
Okay,
I think Ty Simpson's going to start all the way, and then Russell goes next year.
So he's more of a sit in the pocket type guy. Obviously talented wide receivers there, Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. Those guys are going to be tough to defend. Carolina kind of shut Williams down a little bit last year. He didn't do a whole lot against us. So it could be due for a breakout game there. Really, obviously extremely talented on both sides of the football. I think this is kind of going to be a statement year for Alabama. I think Kalen DeBoer got a little bit of he's under the microscope. He was under the microscope from day one. But this year, tremendous amount of pressure on them to win and win at a high level. Just an extremely talented team and could come into this game And I just want to kind of look at their schedule, reference that just a quick second. I'm looking at what you guys have before you come there. I mean, and I'm looking at your schedule. I mean, I really only see on here one opportunity for a loss. I mean, well, there's an opportunity for a loss every week, but
Vanderbilt 2025.
Yeah, a legitimate. The game at Georgia, I think, is the only one where I could say that Alabama's probably going to be an underdog, possibly, and that's not even a given by that point in the season. You're coming off the Tennessee game, which is always a big game for Alabama at home. I expect Alabama to win that game. You're either going to come in here with one loss or undefeated. Just given some of the losses we've had on defense, and probably coming off of a game against Oklahoma, which is probably going to be a close, emotional game, either one way or the other. Either South Carolina, I think, is going to drop a close one, or they're going to win a close one. I think we lose this game. A lot of people are predicting South Carolina to get the win here because of I don't know what it is, because Alabama's got to lose a game at some point during the season, or the Williams-Brice magic, or the 2010 miracle win against number 1 Bama at home. But I think we dropped this one. Just don't think they're quite there yet.
Yeah, so I think at that point Ty Simpson's still the quarterback starting, which he's a better pocket passer than Milroe. The question is, are we going to need him to run a lot? Because if we need him to run a lot, we might be screwed, especially if the offensive line still isn't fixed. My concerns for this game are the main thing being where it's positioned, because we'll be playing Tennessee the week before. It's going to be a revenge game in Bryant-Denny Stadium, which I do think we win. I think by that point we're standing on one loss, and it's on the road against Georgia. South Carolina. Alabama didn't really do too good on the road last year. We did get the dominant win over LSU, but we also lost on the road to Vanderbilt, lost on the road to Oklahoma, which we never should have. And, of course, we did lose on the road to Tennessee. And there's something I think that's hidden in plain sight with this game, and it has to do with the fact that it's right after Tennessee. Alabama, I think, gets the emotional victory over their rival. Remember last year, week 6, we were coming off of that big emotional win over Georgia, and then we lost to Vanderbilt, which we really had no business losing to that one, but we let that emotionality get in the way. Mm-hmm. South Carolina this year is a lot more talented than last year's Vanderbilt is. You still got Sellers. I think the crowd, because for some reason you put this as homecoming. I don't know why you would want to put Alabama as homecoming. My only guess is crowd support to try and counteract the Bama effect.
Yeah. Playing Alabama, you shouldn't think there would be a problem with crowd support at all. I don't know. I've been at a bunch of homecoming games. I really haven't noticed any difference in those versus a regular home game, but I don't know. I don't know if it had something to do with just the week that it fell on or what, but
I think Williams-Brice Stadium's rocking. The team's going to be determined to avenge the 27-25 loss from last year. And I actually think South Carolina pulls the upset over Alabama. So this is actually interesting. Carolina Jackpot, the South Carolina fan, thinks Alabama beats South Carolina. I, the Alabama fan, think that South Carolina gets the win over Alabama. So we each picked our team to lose this game.
Yeah. That's interesting, but yeah, I kind of try to look at things. I kind of try to, I don't know. I look at things from a what do you say? Sometimes I get kind of pessimistic. I just try to be a realist, So, I mean, do I think South Carolina's capable of pulling the upset here in this one? Sure. I mean, I absolutely do. But at the same time, you kind of going to want to go with the safe play. just knowing how talented Alabama is. So,
And then this is a weird stretch you got between your first bye week and your second bye week. You already covered LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama. And then the last game of that 4-game stretch before your second bye week is on the road against Ole Miss. What's your thoughts here?
Another unknown. Really, I don't know what we're going to get out of Austin Simmons at Ole Miss at quarterback. I don't know a lot about him. It looks like he played just a little bit last year, but I can tell you he's probably going to end up being pretty good because it doesn't seem to matter who's under center there at Ole Miss. Kiffin usually gets the most out of them. Really good offensive-minded coach here. They got 6 returning starters on that side of the ball. They got Logan Diggs. Is slated to be the starting running back. That's the guy that transferred from Notre Dame a couple of years ago. And then some transfer wide receivers here, a kid from Penn State, a kid from Oklahoma State, kid from Virginia Tech. Just a roster of a lot of question marks on it there at Ole Miss. I don't know if they're going to take a step back. I don't know if he'll have them contending for the playoffs again. A road game, we're generally not that great on the road unless the name on the other jersey is Vanderbilt or Clemson. But this is a hard one to pick here. I'm looking at their schedule. They've got a tough stretch, too, before Carolina comes to town. They are at Georgia 2 weeks before, and then the week prior, they're at Oklahoma. And they actually speaking of Washington State, they play them the week before they play those two. They got kind of tough stretch of games there. This is a back and forth one, could be kind of high scoring. It's almost coin flippy right at this point with a team that I don't know that much about, trying to predict one this far out into the season. But if I have my druthers here, I think we drop this game. I really do.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same questions you do about Ole Miss because Ole Miss had to fill a lot of their spots with transfers. They lose Jackson Dart to the first round. He goes to New York. Can Lane Kiffin win the big one here? I mean, they did do that a few years ago against LSU, but how did they do with this kind of roster that they have that we know not a lot about? I'm going to go with who I can trust more. I think we can trust South Carolina's roster at the moment more than we can trust Ole Miss's roster at the moment. So I'm going to go with South Carolina to actually get the win there. So I think going into your second bye week, you only have one loss, and I think it's on the road to LSU. You, on the other hand, think you had 3 losses by that point, and they're to LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. But coming out of your second bye week, you then have to go on the road to Texas A&M.
This is another game. Here's another team that's going to be in a revenge spot against South Carolina. Now, the week prior to this game, they're on the road at Mizzou. Texas A&M bringing back 8 guys on offense, 7 on defense. They got the dual threat quarterback there, Marcel Reed. And they also return a key piece here, Le'Veon Moss, their running back. This guy ran for 763 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, about 6 yards a carry. He was well on his way to having over a 1,000-yard season. He got hurt against Carolina early in the game with the ACL, out for the rest of the year. Not a lot of people are talking about he's back. And if he's back at full strength, that's going to make that offense pretty dangerous. If you'll remember, up until that point last year, Texas A&M came into that game with just one loss. They came in and they lost the Notre Dame game. They were sitting there at 7-1. They had beaten LSU by 15 points the week prior. and were favored inside. We kind of smacked them around a little bit. Now, it was a close game early on and kind of into the fourth quarter, and then we pulled away a little bit. But I really think this is a team that's going to be – I think they're going to be really good. You know, they make the joke about the Texas 8-4 and all this and that. But I think that Elko, I think they finally have a solid, level-headed coach here who's he's a defensive-minded coach, but he's going to place emphasis on the offensive side of the football. They don't seem to make a lot of mistakes. They don't seem to have a lot of self-inflicted wounds. I think they're going to be pretty good, and I think that we're going to end up dropping this one too. I think they're going to take their third loss in a row, unfortunately. I think Texas A&M could roll into this thing. You know, looking at their schedule, it's not all that tough. They are at Texas in the last game of the season. That's going to be their toughest game. I mean, other than that, I mean, you look at them, they're at LSU. You know, that's a tough game, but you know, they got a home game with Auburn and Mississippi State. Those aren't they do play at Notre Dame, but you know, a non-conference game, doesn't really affect them going to play for the SEC championship potentially. You know, the Florida game at home, I guess, maybe could be a tough one for them, but I think that Texas A&M is probably going to get the win here in this game. It's just going to be just always been a tough environment for us to play in. South Carolina's never played particularly well there. And I think this could be a loss that might get away from you. I mean, I think this one could maybe potentially be the one ugly loss in 2025.
Yeah, I have the same feelings you do about the Texas A&M, especially given the home environment. We've seen infamous examples of great teams going to Texas A&M and either struggling when they shouldn't have or losing. A lot of people probably remember the 2021 Alabama ranked number 1 versus unranked Texas A&M, and Alabama loses that one in Texas A&M. LSU's gone there and lost quite a few times when they shouldn't have. I think even Georgia one time went there and struggled. I think you take the loss here, even though you are coming off a bye week. I think it's mitigated by Texas A&M at home and Texas A&M looking for revenge. I think you drop that one, which I think it's the second one you drop. You think it's the fourth one you drop.
Yeah.
But then you get some reprieve, luckily, because on Saturday, November 22nd, you have to come back to William Bryce, and you're playing Coastal Carolina from the Sun Belt. What's your thoughts?
I think we get the win. I don't know a whole lot about Coastal Carolina right now. They were a really formidable Group of 5 team a few years ago when they had Jamie Chadwell out there coaching them up, but he's since moved on, went to Liberty, and they've kind of been wandering around a little bit aimlessly the past few years. I think Carolina gets the win over them there in kind of that's kind of a get right. Yeah, normally we have an FCS team in that position, but this year we're with a Group of 5. But same result. I mean, I think that we go out there and play pretty well there. Maybe you've got some beat up players that you get to rest. Maybe this is the kind of game where, like the Wofford game last year, South Carolina had in this same spot. I think they sat people for a large majority of that game. This year against this team, maybe, they sit maybe the fourth quarter. They were 6-7 last year, just to size it up, that being Coastal Carolina. They only returned 3 starters on the defensive side of the ball, and that could be kind of problematic for them. But I think Carolina gets the win there on that one. I'll spend a whole lot of time on it because, as I said, I don't know a whole lot about them. Their quarterback here, I see MJ Morris is a kid that was quarterback at NC State 2 years ago, and he transferred last year, played at Maryland. Doesn't look like he did a whole lot there, so he should get plenty of time here at Coastal Carolina. But we'll see. I don't see it being too tough.
Yeah, that's the typical cupcake spot for the SEC. I think Alabama plays an FCS opponent. Uh, I think you get the win there. Again, I don't know a lot of about Coastal Carolina either, but given who you're playing, I think you should get the win. And
I
then
mean,
the last,
last time they played FBS team or a Power Four team last year, them being Coastal Carolina, they played Virginia at home, and I thought that one was a spot where Coastal might pull an upset over a Power Four team. They were a 3-point underdog and ended up they got blown out by 20 points. So, yeah.
and then in the last game of the season, the team that I think Carolina makes Carolina Jackpot's blood boil at the mention of it, Clemson. And this year, you're taking them on at home. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina's proven the past two times they went up Clemson that that wasn't a task too tall for them. 2 years ago, kind of came from behind. 3 years, 2022, punched him in the mouth in the second half. Ended up winning that game. Last year, Carolina had to kind of come from behind. Lenore Sellers scores a touchdown with about a minute 15 left to pull out the win there, but to be honest with you, we didn't play a great game there. South Carolina wasn't real disciplined. They had a couple of costly turnovers inside the red zone when they could have potentially scored more points. We should have beaten them by double digits, and it should have never come down to, once again, it was missed opportunities. It's kind of like that LSU thing. Fortunately, we were able to get the win because the defense was able to stand up. Of course, Demetrius Knight picking the Klubnik off with like 15 seconds left there in the game when they were the Clemson was some really weird, bad play calling at the end of that game. It should have just, kind of ran the ball up the middle. They were inside the 20. They could have potentially set up for a game time field goal, gone to overtime, and they probably could have won. Generally, the home team wins in overtime situations. You get momentum at home, but I chose not to do that. They played with fire, and I got burned. South Carolina, they know this roster inside and out. People are, they are just predicting the moon for Clemson this year. College football playoff appearance, easily going to win the ACC, not going to be challenged, yada, yada, yada. I still think they struggle with some depth. I still think there's a few holes in that roster. Do I think it's probably the best one in the ACC? Yeah, but I don't think it's so head and shoulders above everybody else that they can't be challenged over there. And it's been 11 years, and it's time that South Carolina finally beats them in Columbia again, and I think we get the job done in this one. I think Carolina wins after some tough losses to some conference teams that could go either way. And look, I mean, that Oklahoma game, and they could lose that one. I mean, they could be, we could beat Clemson and end up being a 7-5 team. But I just think all those teams, with the exception of maybe, I don't know, maybe Ole Miss, I think they're all going to be tougher than Clemson. And it'll set you up nicely for that. The only caveat I'm going to add to this is we don't know what the injury situation is going to be like at this point in the year. This is week 12 or game 12. And both teams probably are going to have some substantial injuries by that point. Hopefully it's not something that's going to affect the outcome of the game there. But I think we get the win over them at home here, and we make it 2 in a row. I personally, I think they bookend their season with losses to SEC teams, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think Clemson by that point already clinched the ACC at that point. So this game really may not matter for Clemson. It's not going to affect South Carolina's chances for the SEC because this is an ACC SEC opponent. But if you are sitting on 2 losses by that point, which I think you are, this could be a playoff eliminator game for South Carolina. I think at home, you beat them last year in their stadium. You're playing them at home this year. You could very well catch Clemson looking ahead to the ACC title game. I don't know if that's even possible for Clemson, but if they are, then I think this is the spot where you catch them looking ahead, and I think you actually pull off the win here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think we take the win here in this game. Just too many things to me that point to Carolina being able to get a win over them. I think Shane Beamer's finally kind of broken through what Will Muschamp was not able to do, and that's figure Clemson now. And hey, look, I will say this in the defense of Will Muschamp during his time at Carolina. I mean, those were some good Clemson teams that he faced. I mean, I think he was facing a better group of Clemson teams than what Shane's had to go against. Not by a ton. I mean, they're not 6-6 Clemson teams or 7-5 teams, but they're 9-3, 10-2 teams. They're not 12-0 teams that ran through the conference schedule and have a first round draft pick at quarterback.
So there's our final record predictions for South Carolina. Jackpot has South Carolina going 8-4 with losses to LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. I, on the other hand, have South Carolina at 10-2 with losses to LSU and Texas A&M. Kind of a very different spot. Jackpot, do you think that if South Carolina were to go 10-2, that would net them a spot in the playoffs?
Yeah, with losses to just those two, yeah, absolutely. I don't see how you couldn't, because I think LSU and Texas A&M are both also going to have really good years. Now, if somehow or another, if LSU and Texas A&M both end up 6-6, and those are the only two games you drop, then maybe so. But I don't see a world where that happens. If South Carolina goes 10-2 against an SEC schedule and beats Alabama like you're predicting, then beats Clemson, yeah, I don't see how they could keep them out of the playoffs.
And then not to mention last year, we saw Alabama lose to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, both of whom went 6-6, and they nearly got in over SMU, who had a better record. If South Carolina goes 10-2, I think South Carolina gets in this year. There's 5 teams in the SEC that I think have the biggest shots at making the playoffs. Georgia and Texas, obviously. Alabama, South Carolina, and then LSU, I think, are the 5 teams in the SEC that have the biggest shots at the playoff this year.
Yeah, so you're not on the Florida Gators hype train.
No, I think Napier's out after this year. I think they have similar to what West Virginia, where West Virginia had that one good year with Neil Brown, and then it bottomed completely out. And then not to mention Florida takes on if Oklahoma doesn't have the toughest SEC schedule, Florida does.
They do, and I wonder with them, I think DJ Lagway is a really good player, but I think he's also there's a lot of danger there that he's going to get hurt. He's gotten hurt a couple of times, and I don't know that he finishes the season. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but you look at it, and it's very possible.
All right, so thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you, Jackpot, for coming on to the video today.
No, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Next prediction video will probably come out later this week. I'm planning on it to be Michigan. In the meantime, check out the ones I've already done. Check out the Go Pats 99 channel for NFL content. A prediction video is coming out on that one with another special guest. Thank you very much. Please subscribe. Subscribe to Carolina Jackpot if you aren't. And thank y'all very much. Roll Tide. And thank you very much, Jackpot.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you very much.
All righty.
All right. I'll let you know when the video is up on YouTube. I'll send you the link.
Okay. Hey, man, I appreciate it.
I appreciate it very much. I enjoyed the video.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.